Hello world, especially my Kick Talk friends and family. It's been a minute, but I'm back like I left my car keys. I just came from Korea and I had an amazing trip. And during that trip I wore some Air Max 95 Neons, and that's the shoe we're going to talk about today. So without further ado, let's go! The Air Max 95. What a special shoe. Before I get into all the technical details and the design, let's share some fun facts. Did you know that this is the first ever Nike to come out with a black midsole? And the reason why? The designer didn't want the shoe to look dirty quickly. Also, did you know this was the first ever Air Max with heel to toe visible bubbles? Obviously the 97, the 98, and everything came after, but this is the original. Let's talk about the design. Originally designed by Sergio Lozano, the shoe came out in 1995. Sergio has a background of working for Nike ACG, which is like the boots, outdoor recreational subdivision of Nike. They tasked him to make running cool again. Nike started out as a running company, but by the mid-90s, basketball had taken over the company. You had Barkley, you had Jordan, you had Pippen, the list goes on. They were making a bunch of cool shoes and cool ads, and people were starting to slowly forget about the running division. So they wanted something to come out with a bang. And like anything that's controversial, when the shoe was first designed, a lot of Nike execs did not like it. Either way, it became to be one of the greatest Nike Air Maxes of all time, and in my opinion, the Air Max that started everything. Obviously, you had the Nike Air Max 1, but this was the one that made people say, okay, Nike's on a different level. Let's talk about the inspiration behind the shoe. It's a combination of anatomy and outdoor experiences, and I'm going to show you what I mean. Firstly, where you see these neon eyelets, or as people like to call them, lace holes, they're supposed to represent the human rib cage. If you go to the back of the shoe, this is supposed to represent the human spine. You guys following me so far? When we go to the bottom of the shoe, it's a little worn out, but this is supposed to represent the spinal cord structure. And lastly, one of the most iconic parts of the shoe, this gradient, this is supposed to represent rock sediments over years of time. You know how you remember in geography how you just see the different layers, how old the earth is and all that? That's actually where this comes from. So let's talk about the colors now. These are interesting colors. Like I mentioned before, this is the first time Nike ever came out with a black midsole. And the understanding was that Sergio Lozano didn't want your shoe to look dirty. He wanted to make it look fresh for a long time. So that was the first thing he implemented. Second thing he implemented was the gray gradient. As you might see for gray cars and other gray things, they don't get dirty as quickly. So that's why he did that. And lastly, the Volt colors, it was just to add pop because the shoe was kind of gloomy and gray without that, right? So what's interesting about this neon is this was the first ever time Nike used neon on the shoe. And if you know Nike, they haven't stopped using neon since. So that's a really exciting thing about this shoe. So let's talk about this shoe's place in pop culture. I think everyone knows its place in pop culture. It's a super popular shoe. You've probably seen it on your favorite TV shows. This was actually even in a Japanese anime. And it's been loved by the hip-hop streetwear culture. Also in London, they go crazy for it. My roadmen, they know what I'm talking about. So let's get specific. In England, London to be exact, they call these shoes 110s. So if you ever go to London and someone says, oh, look at its 110s, that's what they're talking about. The reason why they call it 110s is this shoe is 110 pounds. Funny enough, it used to be. Now, because of inflation, the shoe is actually about 116, but the name stuck, so you'll keep hearing that from now on. Also, very interesting fact about English culture in this 95. There was a police report that came out about a decade ago that showed this was the second most likely sneaker print to be on the scene of a crime scene. Now, when we go to hip-hop and streetwear culture, I remember seeing Ghostface Killah, Wu-Tang specifically wearing Air Max 95s, rapping about them. And I think about two rap songs in particular that really shine light on the 95s. The first one was The Game and Hate It or Love It. I don't know if I can play the song for copyright issues, but he said, I'll kill you if you try me for my Air Max 95s. Now, what's interesting about that is doing my research, I found that the gang, which The Game was a part of, the Bloods, had adopted the 95s as their go-to sneaker, and the Crips eventually adopted the Air Max 98s. The second one was Gucci Mane. I don't know if you know Gucci Mane, and I'm not talking about the clone, I'm talking about him back in the day when he was really getting to it. He said, Air Max 95s because I'm a dope runner, balling like an athlete, but I got no jumper. And that was just a huge line down south. Gucci Mane is actually known for wearing 95 specifically during his coming of age. He used to say that a lot of the drug dealers and the trappers that he was competing against would wear New Balances and other type of comfort shoes, but he always wanted to wear the Air Max 95 because it was the most expensive running shoe at the time. It was about $140 and up from 1995 till now. In most recent news tied to pop culture, a British brand called Cortez, hopefully I pronounced that right, just put out 2 or 3 different colors of the Air Max 95, and mayhem ensued. There were riots, police had to shut down the releases even though the shoe was released in 3 different countries. It really not only showed the power of that streetwear brand, but the power of the 95. There are other instances where riots occurred. One of the ones famously happened in England in about 2005. This shoe, actually, this color has been retroed over 10 times. And during one of the retros, there was a factory defect where the shoe would squeak. Shortly after that, a news publication talked about the shoe squeaking, and they said that the customers should have the right to return the shoe. Well, a bunch of customers, over 100 people, went back to a specific Foot Locker in London and were demanding new pairs. And even though the employees in the store wouldn't oblige, it turned violent and the police had to come and shut the store down. I guess it brings out the worst in people, but it also brings out the best. One other story is in Japan. Japan is known for its peaceful, tranquil, respectful way of life. Well, this shoe was on record to be the first ever mugging for a pair of sneakers. 4 kids with a metal pipe beat up one kid to get one pair of these neon 95s. And going into the Tokyo spotlight, this shoe is, some would say, responsible for reselling sneakers in the first place. When this shoe first came out, Japanese resellers would come to America and they would buy as many pairs as they could. And they would go back, and there was a point where they were charging $2,000 to $3,000 for the shoe, and the shoe was still selling out. It's something I've never seen. The fanfare for Air Max 95s is crazy. They've come out with over 100 colors since this one, but I would say this one is probably the most beloved. But you do have some other special colors that I won't talk about now, but you know what I'm talking. In 2020, the Air Max Neon 95 came out again. And I really wanted this pair because they actually said they were going to make the air bubble a little bigger. You OG enthusiasts know what I'm talking about. Well, guess what? I got a big fat L, and it still hurts to this day. I think I still want to get a 2020 pair. But my wife got a pair, which made the L even worse. But I did notice that every Air Max Neon that they do retro is different. I have her pair on hand, and the pair I have is from 2015. They call these actually the charcoal toe. This is very close to the OG. And what they did in the retro was they made the toe a bit blacker. Doesn't really bother me, but it is just a variation that you might be interested to know. Either way, we both wore our pairs to Korea, and we were matching, and I felt so cool. The shoe is not only good looking, but it's extremely comfortable, and we were on our feet for over 6 hours every day, walking around, checking out things, and my feet never hurt after a long day in Air Max 95. So it's a shoe that I definitely recommend. It's not for the faint of heart, because if you don't get them when they drop, you're usually going to pay a pretty hefty resale, sometimes up to $250. but I can guarantee you it's worth it because like the original designer had intended, this shoe is not going to get dirty anytime soon and they're easy to clean. So I highly recommend you get a pair of Neon 95s if you haven't. It's a shoe that you will create memories in and you will remember. But until then, I just need to let you know what you're wearing when you're wearing it. So I'm going to keep getting better and I hope you do too. This is Triple Rich and I'm out. Another Kick Talk, another day. You have a good one.